Hey guys, what's up? What going on? It's your girl Nika of Traveling with Nika, and I am back on your screen with another video. And today we are going to be talking about all things Egypt. Okay, if you have not watched my Egypt travel vlog yet, what are you doing on this video? You need to go and watch that travel vlog first, and then you can come back to this video, or you can watch it after, but just make sure that you watch the Egypt travel vlog. It's over 40 minutes long, and you will get to explore Luxor and Cairo with me for 4 days, and it was a solo trip, so definitely check it out. So we are going to get right into today's video with the different tips that I have to help you guys to avoid mistakes and just things you need to know about visiting Egypt. Let's get into it. So one of the first things that I want to talk about today is actually the visa process. So for me, I normally like to do the e-visa because personally, I like to just know that, okay, my visa is accepted and like I'm good to go for travel. There are countries that allow you to do on-arrival visas, but I just feel like to avoid the hassle of having to like get in the line after like a long travel day to get a visa is just a no for me. So I avoid that normally at all costs. So Egypt, you do have the choice of doing an e-visa and also an on-arrival visa, but I chose to do the e-visa. Here's where like the scam comes in. You want to make sure that you're only applying at the official website for the e-visa. And I will link below the exact website that is like the official website. And you guys know that I have talked about this before, where because I'm a US citizen, I always check the travel.state.gov website for my international destinations, and I check all of the requirements to check those requirements and get the official links for things like visas and stuff like that using that link. So that's what I did personally. The next thing that I want to talk about is safety. So I can only speak about my personal experience. I can't speak for all Black people. I can't speak for all Black women. I can't speak for women in general either. But I would say personally, I went on a solo trip to Egypt and I felt safe for the time that I was there in Luxor and Cairo. And I would say that I want to preface that by saying that I also made sure that I spent the money to hire a guide and driver, which I did think that that aided in me, feeling more comfortable as well as a solo traveler and being a Black woman traveling to Egypt, okay? So that goes into my other tip, where I think that it's a mistake if you don't book a guide in Egypt. And the reason I said that that's a mistake is because I feel like Egypt is a place that you can definitely get like super overwhelmed with all of the things that are going on. And because of the ancient history of the sites and the different temples and things like that, just going up to a site and buying a ticket and going inside and reading like what's on like the informational little placards or whatever, I just think like that's not enough. You probably could have just like sat at home and read some things and be like, all right, cool. I feel like part of the Egyptian experience is having that local perspective and then being able to really translate all of the drawings and all of the language in the various sites and temples and really give you that ancient history from a local's perspective as well. So that's one of the reasons I would say hiring a guide is definitely a must if you are going to be visiting Egypt, for the purpose of the history part of things and also for the safety part of things as well. I felt that with my two guides, so my main guide who basically planned my entire itinerary for me is Peter, and he works with different guides if he's not able to also bring you to Luxor as well. It just depends on how you do your itinerary. So I also was with another guide who was actually a woman. So it wasn't even that I was always with like a male guide, for example. So that's the reason I felt safe. I was also with a woman local guide, and I felt like, again, just having a guide was 10 out of 10, and it was worth every penny. And I definitely did not spare a cent when it comes to this trip and paying for a guide. And that also came with me having a driver as well, which was amazing because I didn't have to really deal with the hassle of ordering an Uber to go everywhere or even my airport transportation. I made sure that all of that was included in the package that I purchased, and I will leave my guide's information in the description box, and make sure you tell him that Nika sent you. The next tip is pretty straightforward, but I always kind of want to remind people that whenever you are going to a foreign country, you need to make sure that you are learning some type of words, from that language. So before I went to Egypt, I definitely had downloaded a few Arabic words from Google Translate, just to be able to connect a little bit with the local people in Egypt. So especially like I learned how to say like thanks, that's like shakran. If I want to say like no thanks, that was like la shakran, like things like that. Of course, my pronunciation is not going to be the best, but I know that they definitely appreciated me just, being able to say a few words in Arabic and, respecting their culture and their language. And then also my guide, Peter, was able to just give me a little bit more words that I didn't know as well. So that was super helpful for me for my trip to Egypt. The next thing I want to talk about is where people don't actually research the location in Cairo, more specifically of where they want to stay. I know a lot of you guys will probably see TikToks and Instagram videos of people waking up and they have like the pyramids in the background and things like that. But you want to just be sure to know the areas that you are booking in when it comes to your hotel. So for me personally, after I was done with my research for trying to find out if I wanted to stay more in like downtown Cairo or in the Giza neighborhood where that's closest to the pyramids, I actually chose to stay more in the downtown area of Cairo, and I was kind of like on the Nile River. I think it was like the west side of the Nile River in that hotel versus me staying closer to the pyramid. So one is because I didn't like the area, point blank. Like based on my research, I saw that it was a really kind of rough area, and safety for me was top priority, and also like just cleanliness, even though it's outside of the hotel. Like I still wanted to walk out of my hotel and feel like, it was a comfortable and clean space. When I finally got to go to the pyramids and we were driving around in the Giza neighborhood, I definitely could see where it's like the area was a little bit more rough, especially because there's animals there, of course, the camels, the horses, there's a bunch of stray dogs as well in that area from what I observed personally and also just from my research. So I opted just to not stay in that area, even though it was closest to the pyramids. So I stayed more in downtown Cairo, which was about like 40 minutes from the pyramid. So if you do want to still have the pyramid background and do all of that, just keep in mind that you may not want to really be outside of the hotel grounds. So maybe like walk around or explore. If staying in an area that may not be as clean for you is, an issue. So you may not want to stay in that area, or you may want to stay in that area, but you would know that, hey, I'm not really going to go outside exploring. I'm just going to stay on the hotel property. So that's all I want to say about the location part of things. The next thing I want to talk about is people did not warn me enough about that traffic in Cairo. Luxor was not as bad, but Cairo traffic had me thinking like I was in some type of animation, some kind of video game, because the way people were, like, I probably barely even saw like stop signs, stop lights, I mean, and there's markings on the roads, but people were not worrying about them markings, okay? People were through and through traffic. I even saw people literally like running across like highways, okay? Like it's a little crazy in Cairo. I can say that from my experience. And I was just glad that I wasn't driving. Like, thankfully, I had a driver the whole time. So I did not really have to worry about the driving part. But, I mean, being a passenger, it was still a little, like, wild, to be honest. So just keep in mind that if you do visit Cairo, you might want to just, buckle up. Or you might want to just mentally prepare for traffic maybe being a little crazy when you visit there, okay? That was just my experience. The next thing I want to talk about is hassling in Egypt. So a lot of people kind of like said that that was their experience when they visited Egypt. And I personally think that I did not really have much of that experience when it came to being hassled at like the different shops and things like that. I feel like you would expect, of course, tourist areas for people selling things that they are going to try to get tourists, attention. I didn't have anyone that like followed me or like, tried to like physically like touch me or anything like that, trying to get me to purchase something. Of course, when I passed by, people were just like, oh, I have this. Either just kept walking or literally just said like, no, thank you, in Arabic, and then just keep going. And I would say as well that, again, I did have a guide with me. So I felt like that also helped to not have me like hassled as much. So I would say I'm grateful for not having to really experience the issues that a lot of other people had when they visited Egypt. It doesn't mean that that's not going to happen to you. So the other thing I want to say is in Egypt, I didn't really have an issue with it, but I know some people, may have an issue with it, but they were referring to me as like queen, princess, or Nubian. Of course, because I am black, you could literally see that I'm black. So they would kind of like try to relate to me in a way to be like, oh, I'm Nubian, or they would refer to me as like queen this and, things like that for queens that may have been like, my complexion. I didn't really have much of an issue with that, but if you are like a black woman, you may hear them, refer to you as like chocolate or princess or queen or Nubian and things like that. So the next thing that I want to talk about is kind of referencing the hassling tip, but this is more specific to the actual shopping experience and negotiating. So Egypt was one of those places that I actually bought like a good amount of souvenirs. Like I spent probably, I think, over like $250 on souvenirs alone. And I had to negotiate for that because it probably would have been like double that price if I didn't negotiate, right? So be prepared to negotiate when you are purchasing anything in Egypt. Do not just buy like the first thing that they tell you the price for. No, like you need to cut that probably in half pretty much and then try to negotiate, from there. I would say a lot of the places that I did purchase things from, they did take card as well. So I did use one of my travel credit cards that don't incur any like foreign transaction fees. And I swiped those for my souvenirs versus paying in cash. The other thing I want to talk about is in Cairo specifically, there's like a big market that you can actually go and like purchase souvenirs and things like that. So I would say just to avoid some of the little like vendors and shops that you may see like at the pyramids, if you really want to go souvenir shopping, just ask your guide to drop you to that market, and they can give you tips as well for negotiating and getting the best bang for your buck for shopping, especially in Cairo. Nothing is free, okay, in Egypt. They want a tip. They want a tip for every single thing. Do not come up in Egypt thinking like, somebody's just going to take your picture for you being nice. Like, no. They're going to want a tip, okay? And avoid everybody that's trying to be like, oh, I can show you this. I can show you that. Let me give you this. Let me give you that. No. It's going to come at a price, okay? Don't get caught slipping. They are not giving you that for free. You're going to have to pay. They are going to be expecting a tip. So just be cautious, okay? Be aware, be mindful that if somebody takes a picture for you, if they open a door for you, any little simple thing, they are definitely expecting a tip. And that's just how it is. Before I left for Egypt, I literally went to the bank and got like small bills so that I could like tip. And that was that. Period. And that goes into my next tip, and this is regarding the money exchange. So when I got to Egypt, I actually tried to get some, local Egyptian pounds when I was in Luxor, because that was technically my first city. But I was able to kind of wing it with just some US dollars and like for tips and things. And then I used my card for anything else that I needed to pay for, right? So like even like to get into the temples and things like that, cards were accepted, which I loved that for sure. When I got to Cairo, my guide Peter was able to exchange some US dollars for me into Egyptian pounds. So if you have a guide, which again, I highly recommend, he or she can probably just exchange your money for you without you having to go to, a bank, an ATM to get your money exchanged, okay? So just keep that in mind, but also be prepared to possibly use like an ATM to be able to get your Egyptian pounds, because you definitely want to have some Egyptian pounds on you to be able to purchase, different things, because not everywhere might take card. But if it's like a major like shopping place or like a tourism site, I would say that in my experience, they did accept cards. The next thing that I want to talk about is the Nile River dinner cruise. I would say that it was a cool experience, but it was chaotic, okay? Like the whole wait time to like get on the boat was like a hot mess, because I don't know if they don't have like the timing, and I cannot speak for all Nile River dinner cruises, but I can only speak for the one that I did specifically, and it was chaotic. I ain't even hold y'all, okay? Like the wait was ridiculous. And then by the time I got onto the boat, I actually didn't even know that they were only accepting like cash. So in the ticket price, like the food and things are included, but if you wanted to purchase like a drink, you had to only use cash. Thankfully, that was my last day, but I did still have some Egyptian pounds remaining. So I was able to get myself like a glass of wine and things like that. But just keep in mind that you need to definitely bring some type of Egyptian pounds with you on your Nile River dinner cruise, because I guess the ticket that I had, it did not include like beverages. So just keep that in mind. See if maybe you could just pay for it in like a higher price ticket if it's possible. I don't know. This is something that my guide did set up for me. As I told you guys, my entire itinerary was basically planned out for me, and I just paid one price to my guide and I was all good to go. I just wanted to give you guys a tip about, bringing cash if you do like a Nile River dinner cruise. The next thing I want to talk about is a reminder that, of course, Egypt is a Muslim country. So you might not be getting like alcohol, like, at lunch and things like that. The only time that I probably had alcohol was definitely, I think, on that Nile River dinner cruise. And it was like a glass of wine. So just don't come to Egypt expecting that, you're going to be drinking and all that stuff all the time, because alcohol may not even be available like on the menu, period. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So one of the mistakes that I think a lot of people make as well is that they spend too much time in Cairo. Like, Cairo is of course amazing, and you should definitely visit Cairo when you go to Egypt, right? See the pyramids, do all the things. But one of the things I loved is that I chose to at least do one night in Luxor. And honestly, I could have probably done like 2 nights and be very happy, because what happened also is that I was unable to do my hot air balloon ride because I only spent 1 night there. The morning that I was supposed to do the hot air balloon ride, unfortunately the weather was not cooperating at all, so that was canceled. So if I at least gave myself 2 nights in Luxor, I would have definitely been able to do my hot air balloon ride the next day. But Luxor as a city definitely has a lot to offer, and I felt like Luxor was a lot of my history and really focused on like the temples and the different sites and things like that, going into the tombs. And then Cairo was like a mix of history as well, but I kind of did like some other activities in Cairo that didn't really involve like, me going into like a temple or me visiting like an ancient museum or things like that. So I think the mistake is only spending time in Cairo. Definitely at least try to check out one other city if you are able to when you plan your trip to Egypt. And the last tip that I kind of want to let you guys know is when it comes to connectivity. So again, I was solo on this trip. So me staying connected with my loved ones and just make sure that I kind of knew how to navigate and get myself around Egypt just in case anything happened. I made sure that I had my travel Wi-Fi hotspot with me that I always travel with. And I purchased a local SIM card upon arrival into Egypt, like my first night. I was actually able to get a 20 gigabyte data plan with a SIM card for under $10 and I inserted that into my hotspot, and I had internet the entire 4 days in Egypt, which was amazing for me. So I would highly recommend, if you are going to invest in a hotspot, definitely check out travel Wi-Fi, and you can purchase SIM cards at your destinations to get cheaper data plans, and you will have Wi-Fi and you're able to connect to multiple devices. So it wouldn't just be that your phone has data, but you can hook up, your iPad, your cellular device, of course. You can hook up your computer and things like that. So that's one of my tips. I would say that I definitely got a very affordable data plan at Vodafone right in the baggage claim area once I had flew into Cairo. Because I went to Cairo first and then I went to Luxor in terms of being in the airport. I didn't fly directly to Luxor. It was Cairo first, got my luggage, then took my flight to Luxor. So just kind of wanted to give you guys that information in case you want to know like how I stayed connected, especially because it was a solo trip for me. So that's all I have for you guys today, and I hope this video was super helpful for you if you are going to be planning your trip to Egypt soon. Definitely, feel free to send me a message, drop them in the comments as well if you have questions on Egypt. I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability based on my experience. And I feel that if you follow some of these tips, it's probably over about 15 tips. If you follow these tips and you avoid some of the things that I'm telling you guys to avoid scams and, being overcharged and the hassle and things like that, I think that you would have a marvelous time in Egypt. And thank you guys for watching today's video. Bye.